This bill would allow the Port of Corpus Christi to partner with Nueces County and the city of Robstown to use certain real property in unincorporated areas or within the corporate limits of the city of Robstown for job creation and economic development. I know, Mr. Chairman, you've been to Corpus Christi, you've taken a tour of the Port of Corpus Christi. You understand the dynamics, and Representative Lozano, I know that from your district as well, we understand that the Port of Corpus Christi serves as an economic engine in our community, just as it does in other areas such as Houston and things of that nature, in other words, the port. What this bill is proposing to do is something that hasn't been contemplated before, at least as it relates to the Port of Corpus Christi, and that is to expand the opportunity that this economic engine provides in navigable waterways as it relates to the ship channel, and extend that to other areas within the community where we can try to generate regional economic growth. I've heard from multiple individuals, one of which includes the city of Corpus Christi, that were opposed to this bill as originally drafted in the Senate. In response to their concerns, we specifically withdrew or removed references to the city of Corpus's city limits, the city of Corpus Christi's extraterritorial jurisdiction. And so we've included those entities, Nueces County and the city of Robstown, that were interested in participating in this concept, if you will. We've also heard from different entities related to industry, if you will, that are concerned about how the resources that the port currently collects and receives and how those are initially intended for the use of creating better navigable waterways and things of development as it relates to navigable waters, and how that would maybe conflict with its intended purpose if you extend beyond that initial purpose. So I want to thank Bill Oswald with Flint Hills, Todd Staples with Texoga, Julie Clempion with Valero, Tony Bennett with the Texas Association of Manufacturers, Hector Rivero with Chemical Council, for how they've brought forth their concerns in a respectful manner, willing to work with the stakeholders. I also want to thank council members Cordy Bosques, Marianne Sainz, Gil Hernandez, Greg Smith, Roland Barrera, Mayor Guajardo. While some of them may be opposed, some of them may be in support, everyone has done it in a collective, respectful manner. And I say that to the committee in hopes that that same respect is provided to others in the audience as well as to you as members of the committee. And if there are no other questions or any questions, I'd like to reserve the right to close, Mr. Chair.
Members, any questions? We'll reserve your right to close. There's 13 members. People registered to testify. I will respectfully ask you to not come and repeat what the person before you said. That being said, the chair calls Todd Staples. Mr. Staples, please step forward. State your full name, who you represent, your position on the bill. Welcome.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. My name is Todd Staples. I'm president of the Texas Oil and Gas Association. It's an honor to be before you this evening, here to testify in opposition to House Bill 4640. We appreciate Chairman Herrero's approach to this and bringing us together, have a good conversation. Let me say this. We are not opposed to economic development. We're not opposed to ports. We're not opposed to Nueces County. The Coastal Bend region is a vital component for the success not only of the oil and gas industry, but for the entire state and our nation, and the fact that it's improving lives around the world with what it's doing. We just think there needs to be a robust conversation about how to structure this to make certain it's done the most appropriate way, the most effective way, so that we can move forward in altogether the best way. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time and appreciate your position. My understanding was that there was, because I've heard about this bill at length, is that there was some language that was going to be presented to industry to talk about perhaps separating the contributions that industry makes so that industry does not, to address the issue that you're bringing to the table, which is obviously a viable concern, but if there's language to that effect, would that possibly change your position on the bill? That would certainly help. We want to make sure that the structure is there. Ports have a maritime purpose, and so we want to have that conversation, but it would absolutely help a bunch. That was my question, because I'd heard that there was language that was being drafted to present to industry to address your concerns, and so hopefully we'll see something about that. We look forward to looking. Members, any questions of Mr. Staples? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair now calls Hector Rivero. Mr. Rivero, please step forward, state your full name, who you represent, your position on the bill. Obviously, I would imagine you have the same concerns that Mr. Staples has.
Yes, sir.
Please state your full
Good
name.
afternoon. My name is Hector Rivera. I'm the president of the Texas Chemical Council. Thanks for the opportunity to visit, and I am registered in opposition to House Bill 4640 as it's filed today. I won't repeat anything that Todd says other than to say that we too support our ports. We support economic development in our regions and support Nueces County as well as the city of Corpus Christi. Represent 70 companies, but I've got a number of companies that own and operate facilities there in the greater Corpus region, in Nueces County and San Patricio County. They have very sophisticated industrial agreements with the port, and we too would like to see maybe a bifurcation of any fees. We just don't want the fees that go for maritime operations to actually be diverted and used for real estate development or tourism, things of that sort. So I think what you described, Mr. Chairman, would go a long way to ameliorating our concern.
I understood, and that is the question. If there is some sort of bifurcation of fees to basically separate those fees that are contributed by industry, that would go a long way as to driving the conversation to change your position. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Tony Bennett. Chair's calls Tony Bennett. Mr. Bennett, please step forward, state your full name, who you represent, your position.
Thank you, Chairman Canales and Vice Chair Thompson. Yeah, there he is. My name's Tony Bennett, President of the Texas Association of Manufacturers, respectfully testifying against House Bill 4640 as filed. I won't be redundant. I agree with my peers, with the other two associations. We just want to, in order to support the bill, we would hope to see language that added to ensure that tariffs and fees collected from industrial users would not be used for economic development. Instead, these funds should be used for dredging, for safety of the port operations, repairs, and maintenance.
Understood.
And we look forward to working with Representative Herrero and the local team down there with the port.
I know he's working hard to see what kind of compromise language there is. Members, any questions? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chair calls Charles Buhan. Buhan, I'm sorry. If I got that wrong, please correct me. Bujan. Third time's a charm. Croatian. Mr. Bujan, please step forward, state your full name, who you represent, your position on the bill, please.
My name is Charles Bujan. I'm mayor of the city of Port Aransas. I'm here to represent the council, city council of Port Aransas, as well as members of our community.
In your position?
First of all, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak in opposition to 4640.
Please proceed.
This legislation grants the Port of Corpus Christi unvetted, unrestricted land development authority that will impact all the cities in the Coastal Bend region, whether the development lies within a city's limits or not. It will create an unlevel playing field favoring the port, whether inside municipal limits or in neighboring unincorporated county land, as is in our case. It will incentivize the port to buy additional properties like McDermott, Brown and Root, and others, taking away valuable ad valorem taxes from not only our city, but our children that are raised in Port Aransas. When the port was asked, what do you want these uses for? What is it that you want to build? The port responded, we don't know yet. So I asked this question: why on earth would you grant a bill when no one in the entire state of Texas, including the Port Authority, knows what it's for? Passing unclear bills is exactly what our citizens dislike and complain about, those of us in government positions. This bill has no clear purpose and is opposed by the majority of our voters in our city. Thank you.
Mayor, quickly, my understanding, because I've read the bill, Port Aransas is not included in the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir. Any members, any questions?
Yeah.
Chairman Lozano.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
You mentioned something that I had been speaking earlier with TEA about, as Vice Chair of the Public Education Committee, removing properties off the tax rolls would have a negative impact on funding per pupil
Yes,
students.
yes,
That's pretty significant.
yes, it is.
And the other thing is, in the past, I've read in the paper that there have been threats made by the port that if there's any position taken by any entity that receives funds from them in donations or in conciliatory contractual agreements, that they would rescind agreements or no longer donate money. If there's any retaliatory action taken to the city of Port Aransas for your position on this bill, the Attorney General's office has already been informed, and I would like to know immediately so that we
Absolutely.
can enjoin them from doing
I
that.
have not heard that.
Okay,
However, if they attempt that, I will certainly contact you.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Members, do we have any other anecdotal questions? Chair now calls Gilbert Gomez. Mr. Gomez, please step forward, state your full name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
My name is Gilbert Gomez, and I represent the city of Robstown, and we are in favor of the bill.
Please proceed.
This bill, Chairman, provides an opportunity for the city of Robstown, okay, which is an economically disadvantaged city in Nueces County, provides an opportunity for us to be able to expand our economic abilities. We have land that we want to collaborate with the port. We don't want to sell land to them, so there's no land taken off the rolls for the school district or anything like that. It's land that can be leased to them that we own in the city of Robstown. And this is the only way that the city of Robstown, which has, for example, a 38% poverty rate in the city. This is a city whose median income is $35,000 a year, well below the state average. This is a city that desperately needs some economic development in our city, and the port, this bill, in partnering with the port, will provide that. I think that all citizens, including the citizens of Robstown, deserve to benefit from this great state where our Texas governor has said that Texas is open for business. It's a state where we encourage business development, and I think that we want to be part of that. That's how we're asking to be part of that.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Thank you for being here. Chair now calls Ronnie Parker. Mr. Parker, please step forward, state your full name, who you represent, your position on the bill, please.
Name's Ronnie Parker. Afternoon, Chairman Canales, members of the Transportation Committee. I'm the mayor of the city of Ingleside. I'm here representing the city council of Ingleside. I'm testifying today in opposition to House Bill 4640. Last November, I, along with 9 other elected mayors from cities of Nueces, San Patricio, and Aransas County, signed a letter objecting to the Port of Corpus Christi draft bill number 2, legislative agenda. Today, I remain in opposition to this port legislation agenda. The Port of Corpus Christi has not been a trusted partner with local governments in the Coastal Bend. It has sued local governments and has publicly asserted its rights of city ordinance, codes, and other governmental controls. In fact, the city of Ingleside has made numerous requests to the Port of Corpus Christi to rezone some of their property to be consistent with the current activities associated with the property. The port has yet to rezone this property. Additionally, when the Port of Corpus Christi recently began the construction of its own new headquarters building in Corpus Christi, it did so without obtaining a building permit from the city of Corpus Christi. And when the city of Portland asked the port to table a recent Port Commission agenda item, it could adversely affect recreational sports in the water surrounding Indian Point Pier. The request was rejected without discussion. I am deeply concerned with the lack of transparency surrounding this bill and the development plans the port has that require passage of this bill. The Port of Corpus Christi has a planned budget of $60 million for land acquisition. One can only speculate about what those plans entail. Thank you, sir.
Members, any questions? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Kathy Scurro. Scurro, please come forward, state your full name, who you represent, your position on the bill, please.
Thank you, Chairman Canales and members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Kathy Scurro. I am the mayor of the city of Portland, representing the city of Portland and our citizens. I'm testifying today in opposition to House Bill 4640. Last November, I, along with 9 other elected mayors from cities in Nueces, San Patricio, and Aransas County, signed a letter objecting to the Port of Corpus Christi's legislative agenda. Although specific language for draft bill number 2 was not available to us in November, we signed this letter because the port's legislative agenda sets a dangerous precedent for ports and navigation districts in Texas. Today, our position remains the same. House Bill 4640 sets a dangerous precedent regardless of the location or where this bill may be bracketed. Specifically, House Bill 4640 would place in the hands of unelected port commissioners the right to use public funds to develop commerce, manufacturing, housing, recreation, and/or other projects the port commissioners see fit to undertake. The mission of ports and navigation districts is building docks and improving shipping efficiencies, not building hotels or other recreational businesses. If the port has extra money for building hotels, restaurants, or other commercial businesses, they should consider returning those excess funds back to their own port customers to help lower the cost of consumer goods and services for Texans. Representatives, in summary, the use of public funds must be limited to the public purposes envisioned in Article 3, Section 52A of the Texas Constitution and strictly interpreted as such. To allow the Port of Corpus Christi to expand the definition of public purposes to include hotels, restaurants, and other competitive commercial developments would be setting a precedent that this committee should consider unhealthy for business and unhealthy for Texas. Thank you.
Just quickly, Mayor, thank you for being here. Portland is also not included in the bill, correct?
Portland is not included in this bill.
Thank you,
However,
ma'am.
may I finish?
Yes, you-
However, it's been represented to me through my role with the Economic Development Corporation that this bill would be a test case for future action, I guess, additional legislative session. So again, it's the setting of the dangerous precedents.
From who?
From the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation.
And are those elected members or are those appointed?
Those are appointed bodies of which municipalities and counties set with economic development. And you should also be aware that that the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation did not pass a resolution in support of this legislation.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Chair calls Beatrice Charo.
Good afternoon. My name is Beatrice Charo. I'm with the Robstown Improvement Development Corporation. I am in support of House Bill 4640. The RIDC is a nonprofit corporation aimed at providing economic development efforts in the city of Robstown. As the Economic Development Director, I know this bill will be essential for our community by providing opportunities for growth and job creation that the corporation would not be able to do alone. The city of Robstown is an economically disadvantaged community, and we hope this bill will help bring in industry and commerce that we otherwise would not be able to obtain. House Bill 4640 will allow us to collaborate with the Port of Corpus Christi and Nueces County to enhance the Coastal Bend region and its industry. We ask for your favorable support of this bill.
Members, any questions? Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Chair calls Roland Barrera.
Good afternoon, Chairman Canales, Vice Chairman Thompson, Chairman Lozano, members of the committee. My name is Roland Barrera. I'm here to testify against the bill. I'm a city councilman, and I'm testifying on behalf of the city of Corpus Christi. This legislation includes a sweeping increase in development authority for the Port of Corpus Christi. It does apply to unincorporated areas of Nueces County and the city of Robstown, but it still has significant impact on the entire Coastal Bend region, including the city of Corpus Christi and the local governments. The bill will take the focus of the Port of Corpus Christi away from its maritime and navigable canal responsibilities. The navigable commerce. The legislation, as indicated before, we have great concerns that it's going to divert the tariffs, the tariff proceeds to other projects instead of their true mission of maintaining the waterway and preparing the item for their customers. Corpus Christi is the regional water supplier for over 500,000 residents in 7 counties. New industrial commercial developments will have water development needs that will need to be addressed by the city of Corpus Christi and our water utilities department. Some areas are serviced directly by the city and others served through many of our wholesale customers in other counties as well. So that in a sense alone, it will impact other communities. This bill will also allow the port as a political subdivision to buy land and remove it from the tax rolls, as already indicated. I won't go into that again, as it's already been addressed, but the Home Builders Association of the Coastal Bend also has great concerns of this, of which they've sent a letter, I believe, to the committee earlier this year. The Port of Corpus Christi has allocated $60 million for land acquisition, as the concern had already been addressed. New and industrial commercial developments will need to be added in the regional public safety response planning system for incident response and mutual aid assistance. Industrial projects will require incident response of the Corpus Christi Fire Department, which is the largest professional fire department in the region. The authority gives the bill, who will also affect the regional planning process for economic development and execution. The Coastal Bend region has worked together to attract major industrial development over the last decade. If our region was a state, we would rank 8th in the country with $52 billion in capital investment over the last 10 years. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'll leave you with this. The Port Commission is an appointed body that is not directly accountable to the voters. Residents in the region deserve to have voters in part of these decisions. No port in Texas has this broad authority. This is a step too far without studying the impacts of the proposed legislation. No financial impact study has been done to determine the impact of the new authority of the city of Corpus Christi and the residents of Coastal Bend. Thank you.
Mr. Barrera, thank you for being here. And I just have a question, because this is what turns in my mind, is I keep hearing that they're the appointed body, but so are EDCs. Those are appointed bodies, and those carry out a lot of financial decisions. And you would say, well, they're accountable to the public because they're appointed by the city. Who appoints the Port of Corpus Christi?
I'm sorry, sir.
Who appoints the members of the port?
The county, once again, the Nueces County, San Patricio County, and the city of Corpus Christi.
Okay.
However, I have voiced to my commissioners that I'm very concerned with this legislation.
I'm trying to address the question is that somebody says they're not elected officials, they're not accountable to the voters. Well, we do the same thing with EDCs, because EDCs have a lot of authority when they invest, but they're accountable to the voters through the people that appointed them. That's how the EDC is accountable, correct?
Yes, sir, you're correct in saying so. Now, I might further add, as an elected official, it is our organization of the city of the Corpus Christi that approves that IDA, not necessarily the Port of Corpus Christi. So once again, that information needs to be clarified.
No, I'm just trying to stick to the issue about the accountability to the voters. That's what I want you to stay with me. And so if the city of Corpus Christi appoints members to the port, like they appoint members to their EDC, then there is the same tangential accountability to the voters because they're appointed by an elected body, by one elected body or another. Is that correct?
By one elected body or the other. Yes, that's correct.
That's all I wanted to get to. I'm not arguing with you. I hear your points. I'm just trying to understand when somebody says they're not accountable. Well, somebody's accountable somewhere, just like when we do an EDC. But I appreciate your testimony, and I wasn't telling you wrong. I just wanted to understand that.
No worries.
I didn't know how they were appointed. I was just trying to understand that for myself. Members, are there any questions of Mr. Barrera?
Yes, Chairman. Yes, Chairman. Good to see you again, Councilman. So basically, just what you're essentially saying with respect to the accountability portion of it, as someone that does development himself, you, the city council, are the ones that approve development with developers.
Absolutely.
They come before for zoning, they come before for building permits and all that. And if you do a bad approval, you'll be unelected, essentially. In terms of a port commission going into residential and commercial development, outside of the original intent of the statute, the first time ever in the state of Texas, if they make a bad zoning, a bad development, they can't be unelected. You know, they have to go through a more indirect process. And what you're saying is that the more direct process of democracy, of accountability, is what you already do when you engage with the private sector for development.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So just to add to Mr. Lozano's line of questioning, so you're not held accountable for the appointments you put on the port? At all?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Chair calls Kathy Fulton. Come on forward, Kathy. Tell us your full name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
My name is Mary Catherine Fulton, and I live in Port Aransas, Texas. I am representing myself and numerous friends in Port Aransas in opposition to House Bill 4640.
Please proceed.
I have in this box around 35 to 37,000 signatures against various projects by the Port of Corpus Christi. The current port leadership has badly damaged its relationship with surrounding communities, especially those communities most impacted by port industries and business. Once upon a time, the port was a very well-respected organization and looked at with high regard. Sadly, the leadership has driven that respect into the ground, as evidenced by this box of petitions. The port chairman and commission, excluding Mr. Hoskins, along with the CEO, failed to listen or address valid concerns that are raised from affected citizens. The port has been and I want to make this clear, non-responsive to a host of issues for the last several years directly related to port activities. There is a great distrust of port leadership and some Nueces County leaders. This bill gives too much power to the least trusted people. The port needs to be investigated and not rewarded for their bad behavior. I hope that this bill dies in committee today. I do want to say that I do support Representative Lozano's bill on House Bill 4130.
Ma'am, you cannot discuss any other bills before the committee. There's only one bill before the committee. That's HB 4640. If you would please restrict and keep your comments.
Yes, sir.
To that. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. In conclusion, I just want to say this bill is wrong because it's not well thought out. It gives too much power to the Port of Corpus Christi, and they need to start listening and repair the damage to the communities and pay attention to what the communities are saying.
Members, any questions for Ms. Fulton?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Question.
Go ahead.
Ms. Fulton, your father was Joe Fulton?
Yes, my father was Joe R. Fulton. He was on the Port Commission for 12 years. He served as chairman for over half of that period of time.
Very famous man.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
him for his service. Thank you.
Where do I, it's right here?
You can leave that with the clerk. Yes, ma'am, if you want to leave it.
Could I ask a quick question?
Thank you very much for your public
Vice Chair
service.
Thompson.
Ma'am, could I ask you a quick question? These port commissioners, they have commission meetings, right? They have commissioners' meetings?
Yes, sir.
Are they well attended by folks that are upset with this whole issue?
Yes, we have attended, I think for the last 3 years, we've had numerous people go and attend and speak in public at the public comment portion. We have yet to ever have anything answered from anything in public comment.
That's my question to you. So what you're saying is that they're not responsive to the constituents of that area or the people that are affected by this. So you have no other way of communicating with anyone in regards to this port, right?
I would say they have been very unresponsive to Portland, Aransas Pass, Port Aransas, Ingleside on the Bay, and even as far down as Rockport and Corpus Christi at times. And do we try to figure out a way? Have I met with them? Have we had meetings? Yes, we have, but it's always, here's what we're gonna do, and if you don't like it, that's just too bad. You are living on a federalized ship channel. This is just the way it is. And this has been the attitude that we have received from them at least for me, for sure, over 3 years.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Chair now calls Wes Hoskins. Mr. Hoskins, please come forward, state your full name, who you represent, your position on the bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I came to say good afternoon, but I'm now saying good evening. So, my name is Wes Hoskins, and I am a Port Commissioner.
Welcome to the Texas Legislature.
Pardon?
I said, welcome to the Texas Legislature.
Someone told me it's like making sausage. I do admire you guys.
We're earning our $600 a month. Please state your full name, who you represent, your position on the bill.
My name is Wes Hoskins. I serve as a Port Commissioner representing San Patricio County.
And your position on the bill.
And we're opposed to the bill. Both my county and myself are opposed to 4640, and this is a resolution by the San Patricio County Commissioners Court. We're taking captive port money, and we're going to redistribute it to unspecified non-port related projects. And I personally think we need to stay within our mission, which is waterway and stuff with the waterway. The port has about $140 million in revenue per year, and we make somewhere between $40 and $70 million. But we have hundreds of millions of dollars in bond indebtedness, and we have hundreds of millions of dollars left to spend on dredging and widening and deepening our channel, which is really necessary to keep us competitive in a world market. We should pay down our bonds, and we should pay for the dredging, we should pay for the widening, instead of unspecified projects paid for by the port captive industry. If we have the lowest tariff and we provide the best service, we're going to attract commerce, capital, and new businesses to the coastal bend, which is also good for Texas. And when the Port of Corpus Christi does well, it seems Texas does as well too. But if we pass this bill, we're sending a strong message to potential businesses and industry that is considering relocation to our area that we are not focused on port-related business. Rather, we are focused on unspecified, non-port-related projects, and we urge not to pass this bill.
Members, any questions, Mr. Hoskins? Yes. Representative Lozano.
Chairman, Commissioner, I just wanted to make sure we're clear. You're testifying on behalf of yourself and San Patricio County,
Yes.
right? Not on behalf of the Port Commission.
No, I'm not representing the Port Commission
Yes, sir.
today. I'm
Just to make
representing
sure.
myself, and I'm representing San Patricio County.
Yes, sir, Commissioner.
So
Commissioner, and it's your understanding that this would be the first port to do this in the entire state of Texas?
yes, it's my understanding this would be the only port in Texas that would have this type of authority.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
Members, any other questions? Thank you for being here.
Okay.
Chair calls Charles Zahn. Mr. Zahn, please step forward. Tell us your full name, who you represent, and your position on the bill.
Pull my hearing aids out every time I take it off. Mr. Chairman,
You
members.
probably don't want to hear what we've got to say anyway.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Charles W. Zahn, Jr., and I'm chairman of the Port Authority of the Port of Corpus Christi. And I'm here today to testify in support of HB 4640 relating to the powers and duties of the Port of Corpus Christi Authority. Traditionally in Texas, navigation districts have been in the business of developing ports and waterways within their jurisdictions to increase navigation-related commerce. But in certain cases, port authorities have been given additional economic development powers. For example, the legislature has given Port Mansfield the authority to subdivide portions of its property into individual lots and to lease these lots for residential purposes for up to 99 years. Similarly, in 2009, the legislature passed SB 835, which authorized the Port of Corpus Christi to redevelop the Naval Station Ingleside property, which had reverted to the Port Authority when the base closed, in ways that would foster the creation of new jobs, economic development, industry, commerce, manufacturing, housing, recreation, and infrastructure on the property. HB 46 would allow the Port of Corpus Christi Authority to develop the following properties in the same way as the Naval Station Ingleside property. Property located in the city of Robstown or in unincorporated areas of Nueces County that is owned by the port or leased by the port from Nueces County or the city of Robstown, and that is not submerged land acquired from state or located in the ETJ of the city of Corpus Christi. Contrary to what you've heard, nothing in this bill affects the city of Port Aransas, the city of Corpus Christi, the city of Portland, the city of Ingleside, or San Patricio County. Not all of the Port Authority's properties are suitable or situated in locations that are suitable for heavy industrial development. The port should have the power to develop these properties for other uses that create jobs and foster economic growth. I'd like to share some highlights from a December 2020 study commissioned by the Corpus Christi Regional Economic Development Corporation and conducted by the Newark team. The purpose of this study was to identify Coastal Bend region's competitive advantages.
Disregard that, I want to hear you.
And determine our ability to attract new industries and workforce. Well, what did they learn? Our region is blessed by geography, land, utilities, our port, rail, and many other things. We're doing many of the right things already, but need to maintain the momentum. The study compares us to a thriving San Diego, California. Our community needs to capitalize on the assets we have to be a leader among cities, using our partnerships to enhance our workforce, diversify our economy, and create a greater quality of place. HB 4640 provides the enabling powers for the Port, Nueces County, and the city of Robstown to plan for future development. The port would likely bifurcate its industry earnings and financing from non-industrial developments and instead issue revenue bonds to fund non-industrial developments authorized by the legislation. Segregating financing will preserve our ability to fund future industrial developments in support of our industrial customers, our number one priority. This is a model that is used in many other areas of the country, such as California, Washington, New York, and Florida. The proposed legislation is an emulation of these models, which has plenty of precedent and examples of success. Passing HB 4640 will have an immense positive impact in favor of greater economic development for our community and future generations. Thank you again for this opportunity to address you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Members, any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, did you consult with any school districts as to their potential loss of revenue as a result of this legislation? The wording from TEA to me was potentially catastrophic loss of revenue when things are taken off the tax roll. Did you consult with any school districts?
I think that you have to understand the purpose of the bill, Mr. Chairman. Most of the properties that we're talking about, the port already has, are Nueces County already has, or Robstown already has. And what we intend to do through this bill is to seek third parties to come in and develop this property pursuant to a lease. We're a landlord port. We have land, we lease it. If we lease the land to a third party, land that the city owns or the county owns or the port owns, of course, is not subject to ad valorem taxation, but improvements on it are from a third party. A good example in Houston, City of Houston leased a tract of land several years ago to the Hilton chain, and that hotel has been there for many, many years, and it creates ad valorem taxes, hotel motel taxes, alcoholic beverage taxes, and sales taxes for the City of Houston. We foresee that being the same thing with the bill that's being proposed.
Chairman, so so earlier I heard something, and I'm hearing what Chairman Lozano's saying, and if you're correct, and then I'm not as concerned as I once was. You're telling me that if you lease land and it's developed, that the improvements thereon are subject to ad valorem taxes?
Absolutely, unless we develop it. And we're not, and the commission that I serve on isn't about to develop it.
So you're not in the, what you're saying here is that we're going to use this to develop land through developers and lease them the land.
That's correct.
You're interested through this bill to be a landlord, not a developer.
That's correct.
Have y'all ever been developers?
We develop docks for our,
But other than that?
no.
Okay. So earlier, I heard, none of those cities are in this bill, but something tells me if Mr. Herrera's successful and the bill is successful, that they one day might want to be in it. Perhaps Mr. Herrera would be, think about language that perhaps said, you know what, the city councils can vote in or out, or counties can vote in or out to be part of this. But I heard some concerning language from Ms. Fulton up here that said y'all were bad neighbors to Port A and all these people, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond to that, because my mother's from Corpus Christi, and I've never heard her say a bad thing about the port.
No, and I know your mother well, and she would if she thought there was something wrong. But
Oh, yes.
I want to address two of those. I've known his mother a long time. I want to address two things Ms. Fulton said. First of all, she made a comment that they've been coming to meetings for 3 years, and they speak under a segment of our agenda called public comment. And any of you that are involved in politics know that public comment is from a member of the public to you, and you can't respond to it. So she's right. We haven't responded. If you want to come and talk to the commissioners and get some information from the commissioners, we have a provision for that in our operating rules that says get on the agenda. That way you can interact with the members of the commission. The other question you asked me.
I said, as far as being a community partner with community partners for instance, Port Aransas, you said y'all were a bad neighbor to Port Aransas.
Well, we have a charge, and we were in litigation with the city of Port Aransas over an attempt to limit our ability to do what we had contractually agreed to do with them. And the only way you can resolve that, if you can't resolve it between the parties, is at the courthouse. And that's where we went first. We then came together as a group, the city of Port Aransas and its representatives, and I and members of my commission, and we resolved that dispute.
And in what way?
We had 4 or 5 issues. We had an issue over a proposed permit for a marina that they thought we objected to. What we asked for from the Corps of Engineers was information on that. We got that information, and we sent in a letter saying we would support the city's marina across, access to the marina across Portland. We had another issue that dealt with what ordinances could be enforced on Harbor Island, which is in the city of Port Aransas, but we own 254 acres there. For over 70 years, it's been involved in the oil and gas business. We had some objections to that. We worked through those objections.
Didn't y'all pick up the tab on a water line recently?
We did.
What was it? How much was that?
I just saw we just let the bid on it today, $2.78 million.
And you're paying for it?
We're paying for it.
And it's for the benefit of who?
The citizens of Port Aransas and Mustang Island.
Is that the only sort of thing that you do, stuff like that?
No, we have a development fund that we fund nonprofit organizations, organizations with need in Nueces and San Patricio County. For example, when we had the freeze, we provided food and water to first responders. After Hurricane Harvey, we had a community that was out without food, a whole community that's in our Port District, and we provided food and water for that community. We provide for the nonprofit organizations that each one of you probably participate in the communities that you live in. But we feel like we're a good partner in the communities that we work with. We, like many organizations, have a few people that are against anything that we do. I catch a lot of flack from that group, but I've been catching it from them for years. And
Thank you, Chairman. Members, any other questions?
Yes, Chairman.
Chairman Lozano.
Yes, Chairman, one more question on one thing that's troublesome in the bill. Well, 2 questions. First, you mentioned that the port wouldn't be doing any of these developments themselves because that's not what they're in. Would you do that in the legislation? I mean, would you make that an impossibility? Because right now it's possible under this bill for the port to become a developer or whatever. It's that open. Would you?
That's not a decision I can make. It's a commission, a decision 4 members of my commission would have to make.
And then the other thing was, one thing that's troublesome to really everyone in my caucus here in the legislature and the governor's office is when you remove a line from a bill, or you support a bill that removes competitive bidding. And one of the unique things that, it's a well-respected law journal, competitive bidding is a means of preventing political graft and corruption because the public nature of the process discourages favoritism and fraud. The integrity of the process is a central goal of competitive bidding. So when it comes to this type of contracting, because the port is a governmental entity, correct?
But are you talking about bidding, competitive bidding on the lease part? Or are you talking about, we fully comply in the 10 years I've served on the Port Commission in Corpus Christi, we have fully complied with the competitive bidding statutes of this state.
Okay, because that's the thing, the statute.
Representative, but this is Chairman Herrera's bill, and so he didn't author the bill, so he doesn't have the authority to obviously change it. So I think if you want to ask the chairman questions when he comes back, that's probably the more proper party.
Okay.
He's here to testify in favor of the bill.
Would the port still support the bill if you were to reinsert and leave in competitive bidding in this bill?
I don't think that under the Constitution of the state of Texas and the laws of the state of Texas that I can say anything but yes. I mean, we must
It's just that it's
comply with the
stricken out.
competitive bidding process.
It's just that it's stricken out.
Well, if it has to do with competitive bidding on leases, we don't do that. We negotiate those one-on-one. Our development staff, our real estate staff negotiates leases.
Okay, I'll get with the author. It's just it's stricken out, and it's a big red flag.
No.
But
I can assure you, Chairman, that, as I said, I'm repeating myself, in the 10 years that I've had the honor of serving on the Port of Corpus Christi, we've never violated the competitive bidding statutes of this state.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that.
Any other questions, members?
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Landgraf.
Chairman Zahn, thank you for your testimony. Appreciate you. So I'm a desert dweller. I don't really have much of a dog in this fight, but one area where I do have concern is how some of these costs could be spread out to other parts of the state in terms of, goods that are going through the port. On the tariffs issue, tell me a little bit about that situation, and has there been any discussion about using any of this revenue, either that you currently have or that could be generated under this bill, to reducing those tariffs that could save money for consumers on the other end?
Well, if we're talking about the lands that this bill talks about, Representative, if we lease to a third party, this is on upland lands that are not on our ship channel or the inner harbor. And so what we get from revenue, as I said when we started, we're a landlord port, so we lease that to the third party that develops whatever's being developed there. We get most of our revenue, other than through being a landlord, through the tariffs, but that's for products that cross our docks. You know, we have a tariff system that as a product crosses our dock, we get paid so much per barrel or whatever it is, the commodity is.
Right.
And we never have contemplated that we're going to use that revenue. We use that revenue to provide the infrastructure so that our industry partners can continue to be competitive, number one, and successful, number two. We've never contemplated using those funds for anything other than that.
Okay, so including any sort of reduction in the tariff rate?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And just real quickly, because you mentioned these lands, the port already owns lands all throughout the unincorporated area of Nueces and San Pat, is that correct?
We own 28,000 acres.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify one thing real quick, and because I've heard two different answers to this question over the last 3 years, to be honest. But is the Port of Corpus Christi a governmental entity?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I've heard quasi-governmental. I've heard, but thank you for being that specific.
We were a governmental agency, competed, it were originally a navigation district that was created through the Texas legislature.
Yes, sir.
Just real quickly, how much of that land of the 28,000 acres is in Nueces and how many of it's in San Pat, if you have any idea?
About 23,000 or so in Nueces County, maybe 24, and the rest in San Patricio County.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Chair calls Barbara Canales. Judge,
Thank you,
state on
Chairman
the record that
Canales.
we are not related, although I wish I was.
I'll take that as a compliment.
It is, and so please state your full name, your position, and your position on the bill and who you represent.
Yes, sir. My name is Barbara Ann Canales, and I am the Nueces County Judge, and I'm here to testify in favor of House Bill 4640. In fact, I'm not just in favor of it, I helped bring it forth. This is a Nueces County bill. Of course, we collaborated with the Port of Corpus Christi. As I've sat here for the past few, hour now, I've had such a temptation to answer all your questions that you have posed. You see, it feels sort of strange to swim upstream and to understand the strength of it when Texoga and the Chemical Council and the Manufacturing Council and all the people that are your neighbors, the people that you have been working with hand in hand during the last 13 months for crisis, come and say things opposing you. That's quite overwhelming, to be quite honest with you, particularly since the nature of this bill is to do good for good people. The nature of this bill is economic development. The nature of this bill is to actually create a catalyst where none has been created. I'd love to teach you and educate you about the Port of Corpus Christi so much because I not only love it so much, but I also served it for 6 years as a port commissioner. My whole life professionally has been devoted to energy. As a petroleum engineer and as a lawyer, I've traveled all over the world to see the ports of the world. I've helped establish both environmental precepts, safety precepts, and economic development precepts when I was there at the port prior to being elected Nueces County Judge. I've worked with our neighbors. Currently, we have a $100 million pending grant that will create hopefully a necklace of breakwaters to protect Port Aransas, to protect Ingleside on the Bay, and to protect North Beach and Corpus Christi. These are the types of efforts that we're used to. And what I want to illustrate for you is that this bill does not change at all the Texas tax code. Therefore, there is no implication to the tax code or to those school children that we both care so much about, Chairman Lozano. There is absolutely no impact to the Texas tax code. That means that cities and counties and ports, and yes, governmental entities, do not pay ad valorem on the land that they own, but as you so eloquently stated earlier, they do to the improvements. They do to the hot tax, the sales tax, and all the other economic catalysts that it brings. That's why we do economic development. It's to actually jumpstart it. That's exactly what TERS do, opportunity zones do, abatements do. All of the tools that we have, this is a tool. They say in our business that if you've seen one port, you've only seen one port. They say that for unique circumstances, we need unique action. Not only is our county under 3, potentially 4 declared disasters, Winter Storm Uri, Hurricane Hannah, and COVID-19. 3 disasters. Our unemployment rate, and particularly in the city of Robstown, one of the hardest hit for COVID-19 per capita, the largest amount of death, is 9%. Do you know what Texas is? It's 6. Do you know what the nation is? It's 6. You've heard testimony here about the annual median household income, what we know is AMHI. The one only positive thing I can say about AMHI for Robstown is it helps get grants from time to time because it's so darn low. I want you to know that when I sat as a port commissioner, I sat on audit and I made it a policy to understand what our annual revenues were. When we talk about that promotional and development fund, we're talking about up to 5% of our operating revenues that are given back to our community. Millions and millions and millions of dollars, but only to nonprofits. If the Port of Corpus Christi desires to help with an animal kill building or an amphitheater for children or an airport hangar for a Nueces County judge desperate to get hangars out there so that we can sell fuel for the fuel farm apparently we have with no jet fuel. No planes for that jet fuel, but we've got jet fuel. But we could do those things when we partner. And in fact, it was designated by AECOM, an incredible organization hired by GLO to do an economic and diversification impact study. So when you say, have you studied it? You bet we have. You bet we have. And what was the What was the organizational decision? That we should strengthen our organizational capacity and regional partnerships to enhance resilience and economic disparities and disruptions. I took the idea and the notion from you, from the state of Texas. And I will say that it has been daunting over the last few days to hear the discussions, but here's what I want to leave you with. That this bill is incredibly narrow. It applies only to the city of Robstown's city limits, only to the unincorporated, home to so many colonias and so much impoverished factors that it makes my heart hurt. It applies only to Nueces County-owned land, port-owned land, and city-owned land inside those two very narrow areas. And while I think Chairman Zahn did a great job of talking about history, this legislature, not this one, but the legislature in 2009 under Senator Hinojosa and Senator Zaffarini did exactly this. There was no master plan, but there was land. And the reason this markup is this way is because it existed before. And what we tried to do in Nueces County, and I'm here to represent our commission, was take the template. But I can see that the template has caused concern, and we are willing and we are in active process right now to work with those groups, including Texoga, chemical, the chemical organizations, Texas Chemical, and who else was here? The manufacturers, and any other industry partner. They are our friends. It is very rare you find this judge on the opposite side of those folks. We're not an economic engine, we're the economic engine. We're not important to just the state of Texas, we're important to the world. We're not a container port. There are no goods. There's no toys, there's no electronics. This is a liquids port, and it's this port, the #1 port in the nation, with an EBITDA of $90 million, revenues of $160, cash on hand of $360 million, and cash reserves of $70 million. And what is it earning? A whopping 0.5% interest. This is an opportunity not only to help communities, to help economic development jumpstart, but it does so in a responsible way. We've heard about words like unvetted and unrestricted, and denying children their justified tax is that they're owed. We've heard about services. Do you know who helps the city of Corpus Christi on their last 4 water boils? The city of Robstown. That man. You know who helps vaccinate Port Aransas? Their fire chief. Their EMS. We just ask to be treated the same. I've had the pleasure this morning of not only testifying before you, but I actually conducted commissioner's court from 9 to 4, right, in an office not too far from here. I will admit that I was not really all that happy when I woke up this morning, knowing that I would face this type of controversy for something that can do so good for so many. But then my very first presentation was the Robstown wrestling team who had become state champions. I felt it was a sign. They told me that their motto was all in. And then I knew I could not back away from this bill. I understand there's opposition, I understand there's concerns, but I also understand that that opposition creates opportunity. And I pledge to each and every one of you to work with those that have come here to find a reasonable solution to bring this bill in a much more refined form. I know we can do it. I've already met with half of those who came before you today. And as to the home builders that were concerned, I'm meeting with them back in Corpus Christi on Friday. And I have pledged to, after consulting with Chairman Zahn and their council, to take out housing, because that is the concern. Again, I want to be able to answer any of your questions. There's just so many things to say that's positive about this bill, but again, I'm elected to serve and the people of my area.
Yes, Chairman.
Chairman Zahn.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Judge. Did you, since this is a Nueces County bill, did you consult with any of the school districts?
Well, we have open meetings, and we had over 6 different workshops, and we had this on our legislative agenda. We consulted with all of the political jurisdictions in Nueces County. And again, there are no tax implications, but Robstown ISD certainly knows about this bill. And again, it's narrow only to Robstown ISD, and there are no school districts in Tierra Grande where the colonias are in the unincorporated.
Okay, so you're saying that it's not possible for the county or the port having like a very large $60 million fund to spend for land acquisition available, to be able to buy land that would be taken off the tax roll?
Yeah, so I'm glad that you mentioned that. I was hoping that would come back. So as a port commissioner, as I told you, I sat on audit, and we've always had in our capital budget land acquisition. That is for industrial purposes, not for this type of purpose. And in fact, one of the things that's interesting about the other ports that you heard mentioned, for example, the Port of New York, who owns the World Trade Center, they have a whole real estate development. They have not, I don't think is the #1 port in our country, have ever thought of their customers industrial as anything but their top priority, but they still seem to manage quite nicely a multi-billion-dollar project that we all know and love,
Judge, can I
as World Trade Center.
Quick question, just before you keep going. You said that the money that the port can use, in your experience as a former port commissioner, for land acquisition, it can only be used for industrial land?
That's correct, sir. That's currently the rule right now. That's what this bill seeks to amend, as it did once before for your county. It's done this once before for your county in 2009 to create economic development. It now belongs in the hands of OxyChem. They are the beneficiaries now of the amendment that the legislature in 2009 did.
So as this bill's written, you're saying that it's not going to allow those port funds to be used for commercial or residential development?
This bill, as it's written right now, is for non-industrial purposes.
Okay, so it could, okay.
And I said that it included housing, because in 2009 for your county, they included housing. But that was for when Naval Station Ingleside, and when they decided not to, continue with that, and they needed to make sure that was good use for economic development.
So this legislation would allow Nueces or the port essentially to buy land for residential or commercial development in the future. So by doing that, if they acquired land for those purposes, that could be removed from the tax rolls in the future, right?
Not the improvements, correct?
Yeah, not the improvements. And let me just say this. The city of Robstown has a project. They told you about it. We have multiple projects. This is a permissive bill. So it would take both governing bodies working together with interlocals in order to achieve that contractual agreement. This bill does not change any codes, any zonings, any ordinances. It doesn't take anything away that already doesn't exist. And all of the things that we read that were included in the bill that you just referenced, let me just reference them again. Job creation, economic development, industry, commerce, manufacturing. It does say housing. We've already told everybody housing.
Can I interrupt you? You did
Of course.
say that one of your goals to work with the parties and all stakeholders that you're going to remove residential. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then I guess I'll just conclude, Chairman, so we won't take much more time. It's been already pretty much repeated, but, when you've been on the Port Commission and now as a county judge, when especially my caucus sees that someone's removing competitive bidding from a statute, essentially. Competitive bidding in a well-respected law journal is a means of preventing political graft and corruption because the public nature of the process discourages favoritism and fraud. The integrity of the process is a central goal of competitive bidding. And so this is a huge red flag. Why would Nueces County remove that from this?
Yeah, I think, forgive me, this is not meant to be disrespectful, but I believe you're misinterpreting that, the particular.
It's right here.
But what I think you're misinterpreting is that which is not permissive, that which is not expressly given is not authorized. Therefore, the local government code, for example, has counties subject to the Purchasing Act. There is always competitive bidding. Chairman Zahn also told you, I am intimately familiar with the procurement processes, the Port of
Would you
Corpus
be okay
Christi.
with not removing that?
We already have it statutorily.
But would you be okay with not removing it?
I would be fine with it. We could absolutely, but all I would do is strengthen it using the laws that are already are on the books with regards to procurement. Whether you're a city, a county, or a port, we have procurement processes. And that, just so you know, there are very few places that honor the meeby weeby DB like the Port of Corpus Christi.
No, well, there's other port bills that have gone on this session, and I'm being fair to the Port of Houston, because they had a bill that
Representative Lozano, do you mind having a conversation with the judge offline? We've got a long agenda to go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Judge. Any other questions for the judge? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's all the registered testimony we have for HB 4640. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on or against the measure? The Chair then recognizes Representative Herrera to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all members of the committee for your patience and your willingness to hear all the diverse testimony. You have my commitment that we'll work with all the stakeholders to work those issues as we have already in removing individuals and communities that were not interested in participating in this program. So I look forward to working with all the members of the committee and Mr. Chairman in how we can resolve that issue.
Thank you for all your hard work. Members, any questions of Chairman Herrera?
Yes, Chairman. Chairman Herrera, I look forward to working with you on some of the, I would call them details. The ethics thing is a huge thing. I'll be very honest. And there's a lot of other parts. I'm really concerned TA is going to get with me officially in a Vice Chair of Public Education. If the water decreases, that's a huge issue. And it might be an unintended consequence, but I want to make sure that it's tight.
Yeah, we'll get with you as well, Representative Lozano. I wanted to bring this up later, but I'll bring it up now. The reason, members, that you see the strike-through language, if you will, on the bidding is because Ledge Council in their ingenuity and creativity tried to figure out where can we create this authority and does it exist somewhere? And it does. And that was passed last legislative session in 2019, specifically to address the area that is representing Representative Lozano, which is Naval Station Ingleside. It was a naval base that was closed through BRAC. And as a result, the legislative body said, hey, let's give the Port of Corpus Christi the ability to, when it receives its land back in the revision clause, to be able to utilize the resources that it has to be able to generate economic growth. And what you end up seeing, if you look at the beginning of this bill, it's specifically a reference to the bill that was used in 2019 for the specific purposes of creating economic development growth in Representative Lozano's district. So when you read the strike-through language, it's because this does not apply to surplus land that used to be naval property, if you will. So when you look through it, actually what we're doing is, under the existing law in 2019 that was passed, that's where the legislature actually said, you know what, the surplus land that you identify, you can either use it, sell it through open bidding process or not. So I say that only because, there has to be some consistency, and we're not asking, believe me, to do anything outside of any open bidding process. But I don't want the committee to be confused. Essentially, what you see in the strike-through is because this does not apply as it did in the case of the district that Representative Lozano represents, where they actually wanted to sell some land without open bidding process.
So Chairman, one more thing. So then just to be clear then, that competitive bidding, basically just to get straight to the point, if this does become law and the port is going to lease land to a company that's going to build housing or a commercial development, are they going to take bids to find the best for the taxpayer, or are they just going to be able to use whoever they want?
This bill does not change any of the existing laws that relates to those entities. And that's what I'm trying to make clear. The strike-through language is essentially using the old text, if you will, of how this was previously used, where City of Ingleside said, hey, we want to be able to sell some of this land, either open bidding or non-open bidding. So this has nothing to do with that provision, if you will, as it relates to this bill. And so I'm trying to make it clear to you that this was a language that was used as a starter, and the strike-through is because none of that applies to this bill.
Thank you, Representative Bernardo.
Okay.
HB 4640 is going to be left pending at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now, Chair now lays out Bill 3314. Chair recognizes